Hey everyone, Tankenstein here. Over the last few weeks, there's been a lot of hubbub in War Thunder regarding the release of the F-14, how it will be coming in the Danger Zone update. In my guess, that update will be coming on June 7th, so Tuesday, June 7th. I don't have any insider knowledge. Just because I'm a content creator does not mean I have insider knowledge, but just based on how these things go and my knowledge of how the game works previously, I'm assuming next Tuesday. That said, the F-14, a lot of people are worried about it being this really overpowered monster of a plane, and some people say it's going to be really overpowered, some people say it's just going to fit right in, and some people are in the middle. And I've seen a lot of people from both sides, and really all sides, it's not just two sides, there's a whole bunch of sides to this argument, with varying degrees of how powerful they think this plane will be. And I want to kind of go over that in this video, how powerful I think the F-14A will be upon release, and if it will have any sort of peer in-game, or if it's just going to be this ridiculous plane that's just going to be totally undefeatable and will just have a ridiculous win rate. So that said, let's kind of get into it. And also, if you guys want, and I'll try to link it below, Spitfire did a great video on this. I'll try to link it below. He has a slightly different opinion than mine. Not entirely different, but again, there's a whole spectrum of opinions on this. It's not just black or white, you know, one or two, whatever. It's not just a binary choice here. So in my opinion, the F-14, while I believe it will be the most powerful plane in War Thunder upon release, at least when it comes to air RB, by no means, not for ground RB, but for air RB, it will be the most. I feel that when combined with its incredible radar that can simultaneously track 6 targets at once, or at least is supposed to, and its AIM-54A Phoenixes, it will be very, very powerful. But the thing is, without those Phoenix missiles, all that it has are AIM-9Hs, which are not the best in-game, and you also have the AIM-7 Sparrows, which are, again, arguably about the best, but I don't really believe that they are the best. And the thing is, with the AIM-54As, I've heard, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but I've heard even thus far in the dev server, so there will likely be 2 dev servers, one right now that is still, at least as of the recording of this video, ongoing, and also one likely this coming weekend, just before the update comes out. And basically, even in the first dev server, apparently they've reworked the Phoenixes. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments below, but I've heard that they are actually reducing the launch range of it pretty substantially. So there were a lot of fears that the Phoenixes are going to totally overtake War Thunder, and you will basically get up into the sky and then die. And the thing is, I've not experienced that yet, test flying it. I've not been able to shoot people down for more than around 10 or 15 kilometers. It does feel much more powerful than a typical Sparrow or the Russian equivalent, but it doesn't necessarily feel like it's totally overpowered. It feels like the next step forward, or maybe even the next 2 steps forward in War Thunder. But again, I don't really think it's incredibly overpowered, especially being that, at least as of current, it has around 16 Gs of turning capability, which, while good, is not really all that great. And they are incredibly heavy. They are around 500 kilograms each. So if you're carrying these into battle, you are going to need to stay at a range. If anyone tries to get behind you, even though the F-14 has a really, really good turning rate and you have Phoenixes equipped, they're not things that you can just offload and just throw away. You have to be able to lock and then fire. So it will not be a pretty sight. If you can stay far away with the F-14, it'll be very good. But if you are trying to launch those Phoenixes at all from within a dogfight, you will not have a good time. And I think that is what we're going to see a lot of. So one of the things that I kind of like to point out, and I don't really know if this is a direct comparison at all, but at top tier, you really start to see the difference between the people who fake it and the people who are actually for real. You have the people who buy their way into top tier with premiums, and then you have the people who grind their way into top tier, who have the experience to be there, and are typically pretty darn good. Not everyone is pretty good who makes their way to top tier. I mean, you could put in a lot of groundwork and not be good, but still make it to top tier. But for the most part, the people at top tier are pretty darn good. The thing is, when you have somebody like, I'll just use myself as an example. I fly the A-10A early or the A-10A late, whichever, and I find that even with the early, even though it has 2 AIM-9Ls compared to the late with 4 AIM-9Ls, I go into matches and I get 2, 3, 4 kills with that pretty consistently. In fact, actually, I think I had like 2 or 3 matches in a row where I had 3 kills. I mean, it was easy, very easy. But meanwhile, you have a lot of other people who get into it and they just die to missiles, even though the A-10 has hundreds, over 400 countermeasures, they still die to missiles and don't even fire off a single countermeasure because they have no situational awareness. And ultimately, while all this technology might be here for the F-14, I don't really know if it's going to translate into a superior amount of kills. Now, I think that, again, once you have a superior tool, it will allow people to win more easily. But aside from just giving people the tools, again, you need to know how to use it. I mean, how many times do you see people, and you can look this up anywhere, people who get into a V8, like let's say a brand new Corvette, especially the top end Corvettes, and they just totally they gun it and boom, they're in a ditch. You know, Mustangs do this all the time. It doesn't really matter what car it is. It happens when people do not know how to use or control the machine that they're using. And even if you give somebody this ridiculous amount of power, it ultimately relies on the driver, or in the case of War Thunder, in the hands and the skill of the pilot. There will be, I think, a lot of very good players with the F-14, and I think in their hands, the F-14 will absolutely dominate. If you were to get into a match and you were in a squadron with 2, 3, or 4 top-notch F-14 players, they will dominate probably better than almost anyone else in-game. I really think that this will give them the capabilities until another plane is released that will counter the F-14, possibly the MiG-29, I'm not really entirely sure, or give other planes maybe more capable missiles that they were historically linked to. But as of right now, I think that the only people that will see a tremendous benefit from the F-14 that will be really, really overpowered are the people who have already hit the skill caps with the F-4s, the MiG-23s, MiG-21s, whatever. Because the technology on the F-14 at least increases your capabilities so that whatever you were capped at before, however good you could be with the F-4, the MiG-21, the MiG-20, again, whatever plane, even the F-5E, however good you could be with those, you can be just a bit better with the F-14. And I think a lot of it has to do with those Phoenix missiles. Again, it has tremendous capability between its rate of climb, turn time, top speed, really whatever you might want to be. The only thing it really is not that great with, at least thus far, will be ground attack. It's not the Bombcat, of course. It can use some dumb bombs, but that's really about it. But when it comes to general performance, it's up there with pretty much the best of them. From what I've heard from various sources, it's not as good as some of the top-end MiG-23s in terms of acceleration. And again, it has those TF-30 engines. So once you get into the F-14B, or even I think some of the F-14A late variants, it will have increased power for the engines. I believe it has around 30% more thrust with the increased, if I'm not mistaken, GE F-110 engines. But at least for now, it's still a very powerful vehicle. It's just not as fast as some of the top tier vehicles. But when I say not as fast, it's right about there. I don't really think that the F-14 is going to be all too much slower than any of the competition, as it's right near the top. So ultimately, I feel that the F-14, while very powerful upon release, and I feel that it will be something that a lot of people can dominate with, especially if they learn how to use those AIM-54 Phoenixes, I don't really feel like, at least until everybody has those Phoenixes, and until a few people really master them, you're not going to see necessarily that plane dominate. And you're also going to see a lot of people who have a lot of money, or who just waste their money. I mean, heck, it might just be a waste of money regardless of if you have a lot of money or not. But they might just buy their way to top tier through the tech tree with convertible RP and find an F-14 in their hands and just be absolutely terrible with it. And I think that we're actually going to see that a lot. You see that a lot where people are kind of close to top tier and then they just buy their way to it. Or some people, again, who just have tons of money to spend, they just buy their way to it and they suck. So you're going to see a lot of people who are just not good with it. And I think that once you get into more skillful hands, the F-14 will be the best plane in-game. But I think for an average player or sub-average player, you're not really going to see much of a benefit with the F-14 over the F-4, over a MiG-21, MiG-23. In fact, actually, I would say a MiG-21 would probably be better for most people up to around average skill level, because it still will have the superior dogfighting performance and all that whereas the more advanced players would benefit from the medium range, long range missiles that the F-14 really benefits from. So you're going to see a lot of things, but I think the F-14 is going to be a much stronger tool in the hands of the advanced player, the player who really knows how to manipulate the radar to be able to use the missiles to full effect, so on and so forth. But in the average player, in the average hands of the average player, I don't really think it's going to be all that great. It's going to be better, and you might earn another half frag per game, quarter frag per game on average, but it's not necessarily going to be this OP indestructible thing that a lot of people are fearing. Some things I do fear though, I mean, even in the dev server, I did hit a plane while it was sitting on the runway. These are of course bots, but I did hit that with a Phoenix missile from around 10 or so kilometers out, if I'm not mistaken, give or take around 10 kilometers. So that is a fear that I have, but in order to place yourself in that position in a match while it's still on the runway or just about off the runway, you're probably going to have to be right in the middle of a dogfight or in really dangerous territory. You're not going to be able to do that from well behind your own lines typically, at least not how the game has the radar and the missile set up currently. And a lot of the missiles are kind of wonky. They don't really track perfectly, and they just kind of throw themselves into the ground. So I'm not really sure if Gaijin's going to fix that. If it's meant to be fixed, I don't know. Again, I think that this is largely due to the fact that Top Gun is coming out, and I can't really blame Gaijin, because any company really worth their salt is going to take advantage of a nostalgic opportunity like this and release a plane. It's not like we're only dealing with MiG-15s and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, here's an F-14. You know, we're pretty close to it anyways, and they might have skipped an update or two, but I don't really know if, at least if they can artificially nerf it, or if people just aren't really all that great that we won't see it. And I think that we're starting to get into that portion of War Thunder vehicles, especially when it comes to planes. Like tanks, I think that tanks are a lot easier to play in many ways, whereas planes, you have tons more systems that you have to take into consideration. You have to take basically 3 degrees of movement, 3 dimensions of movement into consideration as well, whereas tanks is pretty much put on thermals, shoot, blah, blah, blah. You know, just know your weak spot, shooting the lower glacis. It is what it is. But when it comes to aircraft, it's a bit more complicated. And I feel that once you start getting into these very complicated planes with all these different subsystems and all that, you're going to start getting into a very big gap of skill between the lower skill people who just kind of, I guess, hammered their way up to the top, and then the high skill people who maybe played half the matches that they needed, that the lower skill people needed to get to that same spot, because they have scalpels rather than hammers, and they are really good with those scalpels. So who knows, this might be the start of a big gap between the high skill players and the low skill players when it comes to win rates, and this could be the start of it, because the F-14 is pretty much where it goes from dumb planes to really smart planes, and we are about to see a new era of War Thunder kind of take hold here, and of course the F-14 is the start of that. So if you can maintain, if you can control all of the systems of the F-14, then you'll get the full benefit from it. But if not, it might just be like a regular fighter for you and pretty much everyone else who plays it. But if you're in that top X amount of players who can actually fully utilize the F-14, you will be much better with it than without it. But if you can't utilize that, or if you just don't really want to utilize it, then you'll just be okay. You know, you're not going to be given some key to ridiculous power with the F-14. It'll just be a good plane, but not amazing. Either way, thank you so much for watching. Please tell me what you guys think in the comments below. Ultimately, again, in summary, I kind of feel like this will be a good plane for most people, a great plane for a few people, and a meh plane for kind of the very lower portion. But as with most things in War Thunder, this will be a very skill-based vehicle. It's not going to uplift people who cannot be uplifted, but for those who have already reached the skill cap in lower level planes, this will be a very good plane, because it brings you that much closer to the edge. Either way, again, please like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you guys think. I want to hear your opinions. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all on the other side. Take care, everyone. Oh, and also check out my F-14 history video. I'll try to link that below. Take care, everyone.